Stop, it's a trap. I just wanted to cross the street after a perfect evening with my son. Suddenly, a stranger grabbed my arm. Stop, it's a trap. A huge truck roared past at 150 miles per hour, nearly hitting me. Shocked, I yelled, "Who are you?" "How did you know?" he whispered. "Don't you recognize me?" I looked closer. I recognized him, and my world changed forever. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. "You are being selfish, Dad." The voice of Robert cut through my quiet evening like a knife through silk. I slowly folded my newspaper, removing my reading glasses with deliberate precision. The crackling fireplace had been my only company moments before, casting warm shadows over the oriental rug, where my son now paced back and forth like a caged animal. Selfish? I rose from my leather armchair to my full height. At 68 years old, I still commanded presence at 6 feet 2 inches. Interesting choice of words. His expensive suit reflected the firelight as he gestured with those manicured hands, a sharp contrast to my work-scarred fingers. "Dad, you are 68 years old. It's time to pass things on to the younger generation." Younger? The word tasted bitter. "You mean irresponsible?" Robert stopped pacing, his perfectly styled hair catching the gleam of the streetlights visible through our tall windows. "I graduated from a prestigious university. I have ideas for modernizing the business." The university? As if that diploma hanging in his apartment meant anything when it came to understanding what I had built. "Your degree doesn't teach you what 42 years of 16-hour days taught me." "Those days are over, Dad. We need fresh blood, new approaches." He came closer, and I caught the scent of his expensive cologne mixing with the wood smoke from our hearth. "You can't hold on to the reins forever." My shoulders straightened, my military bearing from youth resurfacing like a reflex. "I can hold them as long as I choose. That's not fair to the company. Or to me." His voice rose, desperation creeping in where confidence had been moments before. "I've been working there for 15 years. "Working?" I stepped closer, reclaiming my territory. "You've been learning. There's a difference." Family photos on the mantel watched our confrontation, the smiling face of Helen among them, frozen in happier times when our son showed promise instead of arrogance. Robert's eyes flickered to them, and then back to me. "I'm not a college intern anymore. I understand the business, the clients, the market trends that you refuse to acknowledge." His voice cracked slightly. "With that attitude, you'll never see this company's true potential." Something cold settled in my chest. "With that attitude, you will get this company only after my death." A silence stretched between us like an abyss. The ticking of the grandfather clock seemed amplified in the sudden stillness. "The will." Robert's voice dropped almost to a whisper. "The will is in my name, right?" The question hung in the air like smoke. I studied his face, my son's face, and saw something there that chilled me more than the October night pressing against our windows. "Yes," I said finally, "but not for long." I pointed toward the front door with the same firm gesture I had used to direct construction crews for decades. "Out of my house." Robert's face went pale. He took one step back, then another. For a moment, he looked like the child who used to bring me coffee on the job sites. Then, his expression hardened. "You will regret this decision, Dad." He strode down the hall, his footsteps echoing on the hardwood floors. The front door slammed hard enough to rattle the windows, the sound reverberating through the house like a gunshot. I stood still, listening as his luxury car roared to life in the driveway. The engine noise grew louder, and then faded as he sped away into the New York City night, leaving only the memory of burning rubber and the sour scent of his anger. The silence felt heavier than Robert's presence. I remained motionless by the fireplace, shoulders still squared, as the noise of his car engine vanished into the distant rumble of Park Avenue traffic. Slowly, I let my military posture dissipate. My shoulders slumped as I walked toward the wet bar, each step deliberate on the worn oriental rug. An expensive scotch caught the firelight through its amber depths as I poured 2 fingers into a crystal tumbler. I held the glass but didn't drink. My hands, scarred from decades of construction work, trembled almost imperceptibly. The scotch sat untouched as I set it on the mantelpiece, wiping my palms on my trousers. Helen's wedding photo smiled at me from its silver frame. "He has become everything you warned me about," I whispered to her image. The fire had died down. Shadows stretched across the room. Outside, the autumn sunset settled over the Upper East Side neighborhood, the streetlights creating pools of yellow light on the sidewalk. The methodical ticking of the grandfather clock marked every second of my growing comprehension. Ungrateful. The word hammered in my mind as I began to pace the same path Robert had worn minutes earlier. After all I had sacrificed, every lost weekend, every dinner that went cold while I worked late to build something worth leaving behind. I stopped at the built-in bookshelves, stacked with business awards and industry recognitions. 42 years building Morales Construction from nothing into something substantial. From a 2-man operation renovating old houses in the Lower East Side to a 50-employee company handling multi-million-dollar commercial projects. And my son saw me as an obstacle to be removed. The leather armchair creaked as I sank into it, covering my face with both hands. The smell of old books and furniture polish surrounded me, familiar scents of the home Helen and I had built together. Before cancer took her, before Robert's arrogance poisoned what should have been a legacy of pride. Maybe I was too soft on him, I admitted to the empty room. Helen had warned me about spoiling our only son, about giving him opportunities without demanding he earn them. Private schools, the prestigious university tuition, a guaranteed position at the company. All handed over because I wanted him to have everything I had lacked growing up in the working-class neighborhood. The scotch remained untouched on the mantel. I stared at it, recalling Robert's graduation day, when I felt so proud, so certain my boy would take the company to heights I had never imagined. That pride now felt foolish, naive. Outside, a siren wailed in the distance, probably heading toward Mount Sinai Hospital. Life went on, while mine felt suspended between disappointment and resolve. The phone rang once from the kitchen and then stopped. Probably one of Robert's friends, or perhaps work calling about the Monday projects. Work. The one constant in my life since Helen's death. The thing that gave my days meaning. Morales Construction wasn't just a business. It was proof that a boy from the Lower East Side could build something lasting, something valuable. I rose from the chair with renewed purpose. Tomorrow, I would go to the office. I would think clearly without the emotional weight of this house and its memories. The company deserved better than to be handed over to someone who saw it merely as an inheritance instead of an achievement. Carefully damping the fire, I turned off the table lamps, one by one. The house plunged into darkness as I climbed the stairs, my shadow preceding me up the worn wooden treads. On the landing, I paused to look back, at the living room where my relationship with my son had fundamentally changed. Tomorrow would bring clarity. Tonight, I needed rest to process what I had learned about the young man I had raised. The parking lot stretched empty around my pickup truck, a sharp contrast to the usual weekday chaos in the downtown area. I swiped my access card at the entrance to the converted factory building. I heard my footsteps echo on the marble lobby as the elevator carried me to the 12th floor. Morales Construction occupied the entire floor, a modern loft space with views of the harbor that still amazed me after 12 years in this location. I flipped the light switches, watching the fluorescence flicker to life over the reception area, where Anne kept fresh flowers and family photos of our 50 employees. Walking through the silent office was like touring a museum of my life's work. The project wall displayed photographs and blueprints of completed buildings, the renovation of the great shopping mall, 3 office complexes in the financial district, dozens of residential projects that had transformed neighborhoods. In the break room, I brewed a latte, with the ritual precision of someone who has arrived early for decades. The machine gurgled and hissed, filling the silence with familiar sounds. Outside the windows, the city harbour stretched grey and choppy under the overcast October sky. My corner office greeted me with its mahogany desk and leather chair, both gifts Helen had insisted upon when we moved here from our cramped office in the old neighbourhood. "A successful man needs to look successful," she had said, ignoring my protests about the expense. The newspaper was folded next to my computer, but instead of reading it, I pulled open the bottom desk drawer and found what I was looking for. A small-scale model of our very first house. That old house in the old neighbourhood that had started it all in 1982. I remember standing in that gutted kitchen, plaster dust coating my hair, wondering if I had made the biggest mistake of my life. Helen had brought me coffee every morning during that brutal first winter. Her faith in my vision was stronger than my own doubt. 1992, I said aloud, turning the model over in my hands. I started by renovating one old house no one else wanted to touch. Memories flowed like the harbour tide, rejected loan applications, working weekends, sleeping in the truck to save money on hotels when projects ran late. Helen bringing lunch to the sites, pulling splinters from my hands, believing in something I couldn't yet clearly see. Our first major contract, the renovation of an office building in the financial district. It felt like winning the lottery. 5 years of struggle suddenly validated by a handshake with a satisfied client who recommended us to others. Helen's last words echoed in the silent office. "Don't let anyone belittle what you have built, Arthur. This company is proof that dreams backed by work become legacy." Robert had never understood that distinction. Dreams without work remained fantasies, while work without vision produced nothing worth inheriting. My son possessed neither the vision to see what the company could become, nor the work ethic to deserve guiding it. Through my window, weekend sailors maneuvered through the harbour in small boats, their white sails catching the morning light, freedom earned through understanding wind and water, not granted by birthright. The model felt solid in my hands, wood and glue, and careful craftsmanship. Just like the real buildings we had constructed, tangible proof that ideas could become reality through persistence and skill. Morales Construction employed 50 people who depended on careful leadership, not reckless ambition. Clients trusted us because we had earned that trust project by project, taking no shortcuts and making no promises we couldn't keep. That reputation could not be handed over to someone who saw inheritance as an entitlement. My coffee had grown cold while I was lost in memories. I emptied the mug anyway, savouring the bitter grounds as I placed the model house prominently on my desk, where I would see it every day. Standing by the harbour window, I felt the calm that comes from understanding hard truths. The company would survive this family crisis because it was built on something stronger than blood relations. It was built on value created through effort. The phone began to ring at the reception desk, probably Monday's business starting early. I didn't answer, but the sound reminded me that the business would continue regardless of the family drama. My resolve crystallized like the harbour ice in winter. Complete, unshakable, necessary. 3 days had passed since my Saturday morning clarity. Monday's office routine had felt different somehow. Productive, but tinged with melancholy. Now, Sitting at my kitchen table with a late lunch and quarterly reports spread before me, I found my thoughts drifting back to Robert's silence. The antique phone in my study began its insistent ringing, slicing through the afternoon quiet like an alarm. I looked up from the financial projections, counting each ring as I debated answering. Most business calls came to my cell phone these days. 4 rings. 5. 6. I pushed away from the table and walked slowly toward the study, my hand hovering over the black receiver. On the 7th ring, I brought it to my ear. "Hello? Dad? It's me." Robert's voice had a tone I hadn't heard in years, uncertain, almost humble. I wanted to apologize for Friday night." Robert calling me. I straightened in my chair, the late afternoon light streaming through the study windows, illuminating dust motes that danced like my suddenly quickened thoughts. "I thought you wouldn't call me." My voice was more cautious than I intended. "I was wrong to demand things from you." His words came slowly, carefully chosen. "You built that company from nothing. I had no right to act like I deserved it." Family photos on my desk seemed to observe our conversation. Helen's smile, Robert's graduation picture, happier times when we understood each other. Something loosened in my chest. A knot I had carried for 3 days. Well, we both said things we didn't mean that night. "Dad, tomorrow the Yankees play our biggest rivals, their last game of the season." His voice gained energy, excitement seeping in. "Do you want to go? Like old times? I know how much you love watching them win. Baseball." When was the last time Robert had initiated family time? The question took me completely by surprise. Hope surged, despite my better judgment. "Are you serious?" "Completely serious. Meet me at the main entrance tomorrow night, around 6:30. I'll get good seats. I'll make it a father-son night like it's supposed to be." I found myself smiling for the first time since Friday. "Of course I'll come. That's a wonderful idea, son." The last time we had been to the stadium together was in 2019, before the pandemic changed everything, when he still seemed to enjoy my company instead of enduring it. Those games had been our tradition, something Helen encouraged, saying men needed their bonding rituals. "Great. I'll text you if anything changes, but plan on 6:30 at the main gate." After hanging up, I stood in the study, my reflection caught in the darkening window glass. Maybe Helen had been right about patience winning him back eventually. Perhaps he just needed time to mature, to understand that family meant more than business succession plans. Baseball memorabilia on my bookshelf seemed to gleam in the fading afternoon light. Signed balls, old programs, a photo of a legendary player I had treasured since childhood. Tomorrow night, Robert and I would sit together again, cheering on our team like we used to when he was young, and thought I knew everything about the world. I walked toward the bedroom to consider what to wear tomorrow, feeling lighter than I had in months. The workday had ended 2 hours earlier than usual. I left the office at 4 o'clock, telling Anne my plans for the evening with Robert. Her face brightened immediately. "Mr. Morales, that's wonderful. You two haven't been to a game together in years." Now climbing the steps to my front door with extra spring in each stride, I felt the anticipation build like pressure in a steam engine. The October evening air carried the crisp promise of fall in the city. Perfect baseball weather. In my bedroom, I opened the closet door and searched through my casual clothes. There, hanging behind the dress shirts, was my faded Yankees jersey from the 90s. The fabric felt soft from decades of washing, memories woven into every thread. This jersey had witnessed Robert's first game at age 12. I could still picture him in his little league uniform, eyes wide with wonder as we walked through the tunnel into the Cathedral of Baseball. He ate 5 hot dogs that day and felt sick during the 7th inning stretch, but refused to leave early. My old baseball cap was on the closet shelf, dusty but treasured. Helen had bought it for me in 1995, insisting every fan needed the proper cap. The brim was curved exactly the way I liked it, molded by years of shielding my eyes from the stadium lights. The weather forecast on my phone showed clear skies, the temperature dropping to 57 degrees, perfect for October baseball. I selected a light jacket, warm enough for the evening air, not too heavy for the stadium seats. The decision came suddenly. I would walk to the stadium. Standing by my bedroom window, I calculated the distance from the Upper East Side to Yankee Stadium Plaza, 20 minutes at most, through neighborhoods I had known since childhood. The evening was too beautiful to waste sitting in traffic, and walking would give me time to savor this unexpected gift of reconciliation. I called Anne at the office to let her know I might be late tomorrow morning, depending on how late the game ran. "Enjoy every minute," she said warmly. "You deserve this happiness." Deserve? The word resonated as I prepared to leave. Did I deserve Robert's change of heart? Perhaps patience truly was a virtue, as Helen always said. Maybe my son just needed time to recognize what truly mattered in life. At 5:45, I stepped onto the historic sidewalks of the Upper East Side. The gas street lamps came on early, casting warm pools of light over the brick pathways. Worn smooth by centuries of footsteps, children played in a nearby plaza, while the smells of dinner wafted from house windows. The walk would take me past Central Park, through the bustle of downtown, and then down Grand Concourse to the Stadium Plaza. Each step brought me closer to what felt like a new beginning with my son. Helen would have smiled to see me in my old Yankees jersey, walking to meet Robert for a game. "Baseball brings men together," she used to say. "Something about sitting side by side, rooting for the same team." At the corner of Madison Avenue, I paused to look at my house one last time before disappearing into the downtown crowds. The house windows glowed golden in the dying light, solid and permanent against the changing sky. Tomorrow would bring whatever it brought. Tonight belonged to fathers, sons, and the greatest game of all. The Great Wall towered over Grand Concourse as I approached the stadium entrance. Crowds of fans poured toward the gates, a sea of red and navy blue mixed with occasional rival jerseys worn by brave souls venturing into enemy territory. I spotted Robert near the ticket windows, waving enthusiastically. He wore khaki pants and a crisp, ironed Yankees polo shirt, more formal than my antique jersey. But genuine enthusiasm seemed to radiate from his face as he approached with open arms. Our hug felt natural for the first time in years. His embrace lingered for an extra moment, and I caught myself fighting unexpected tears. "Dad, you look great. That old jersey brings back memories. Your mother bought it for me the year you started Little League." I adjusted the brim of my cap, suddenly self-conscious. Thought it was appropriate for tonight. Robert pulled expensive tickets from his pocket with pride. "Section 18, right behind home plate. Best seats I could find." The price of those tickets must have been considerable, far more than Robert usually spent on anything. His generosity surprised and moved me as we passed through security and entered the stadium concourse. "Remember when we used to sit in the bleachers?" I asked, pointing toward the cheaper seats. "Of course, but tonight deserves better than the bleachers. This is special." Our seats exceeded all expectations. A VIP section with cushioned chairs, cup holders, and wind protection. Robert had clearly spent a significant amount of money to make this evening memorable. The gesture spoke louder than any apology. "Robert, these seats must have cost a fortune." "Worth every dollar to see you smile like that," he replied, signaling a hot dog and beer vendor. As the teams took the field for warm-ups, we settled into a comfortable conversation. Robert asked about specific players. He recalled statistics I had taught him years ago. He laughed at my observations about the rivals' overrated payroll. Dad, remember when we came here and I was 12? You explained to me why the stadium was special. The Great Wall, the odd corners of the field. That night you ate 5 hot dogs and got sick. I'm limiting myself to 2 tonight, Robert laughed, and the sound transported me 26 years back to when he was small enough to hold my hand as we walked these same concourses. The first pitch came at 7 o'clock, and we stood with 40,000 other people to cheer. The rivals took an early lead, but Robert didn't seem discouraged. He celebrated every Yankees hit. He analyzed the pitching changes. He bought me another beer during the 3rd inning. By the 5th inning, the Yankees had rallied to take the lead, 7-4. Robert and I stood together, high-fiving after every hit, our voices hoarse from cheering. For 3 magical hours, we weren't the CEO and the demanding son. We were just father and son, sharing temporary peace. During the 7th inning stretch, we sang Take Me Out to the Ball Game with the entire stadium, Robert's arm over my shoulders as we swayed to the music. In that moment, surrounded by thousands of raised voices in celebration, I felt a complete happiness for the first time since Helen's death. Thank you for calling yesterday, I told him as the last out was recorded. This was exactly what I needed. Robert smiled, but something flickered across his face too quickly for me to interpret. We should head out before the crowd gets too thick, he suggested as fans began to funnel toward the exits. We stayed near our seats, gathering our jackets as the stadium slowly emptied around us. The field lights remained bright. The grounds crew was already preparing for winter storage. Dad, why don't we leave separately? I parked on the other side of the plaza. You probably want to head straight back to the Upper East Side. The suggestion seemed practical enough. All right, son. Thanks again for tonight. It meant everything to me. Our final hug lingered as thousands of fans streamed past us toward Grand Concourse. The crowd carried us down Grand Concourse like a river of celebrating fans. Car horns honked victory songs throughout the stadium neighborhood, while vendors shouted the last deals on merchandise and programs. What a game! I shouted over the noise. My voice was hoarse from 3 hours of cheering. 7-4 against the rivals. Doesn't get any better than that. Robert walked beside me, glancing occasionally at his watch. Dad, I parked in the expensive lot near the corner. Are you sure you don't want a ride home? The October night air felt cool and invigorating after the warm atmosphere of the stadium. Stars were visible above the city lights, a rare treat for city dwellers like us. No, thank you, son. The weather is perfect for walking, and I want to think about tonight, while the feeling lasts. I stretched my arms, feeling more energized than I had in months. Besides, it's only 20 minutes to the Upper East Side. We reached his luxury car, a sleek black sedan that probably cost more than many people's annual salary. The expensive parking spot near Grand Concourse had likely cost $50. Another gesture showing how much this night meant to him. Be careful on the streets, Dad. Robert's voice held a touch of concern that I found touching. Traffic can be crazy after big games like this. Don't worry, I'm not a helpless old man. I've walked these streets for 40 years. I know. Just let your son worry, okay? He pulled me into another hug. This one lasted longer than our greeting. I felt his arms tighten around my shoulders, almost desperately, as if he was memorizing the moment. Thank you for taking the first step to fix things between us, I whispered into his ear. Your mother would be so happy to see us like this. When we separated, Robert's eyes looked unusually bright under the harsh fluorescent lighting of the parking lot. He fumbled with his car keys for a moment before unlocking the door. Drive safe, I said as he slid behind the wheel. Text me when you get home so I know you arrived safely. I will, Dad. You too. Straight home. No detours. The engine roared to life with Germanic precision, and I watched his taillights disappear into the torrent of post-game traffic flowing toward downtown. For several moments, I stood in the parking lot, savoring the unexpected magic of the evening. Finally, I started walking toward Grand Concourse, breathing deeply of the autumn air that carried hints of the approaching winter. The familiar route home would take me past the Columbia University campus, through residential neighborhoods I had known since childhood, eventually reaching the gaslit streets of the Upper East Side. 20 minutes of leisurely walking ahead. Time to process this wonderful turn in my relationship with Robert. Helen's voice seemed to whisper in the cool breeze. Patience always wins in the end, Arthur. At the corner of Grand Concourse and St. Anne's Avenue, I paused to look one last time at the stadium lights. Tomorrow would bring whatever it brought. But tonight belonged to fathers, sons, and second chances. I turned the corner, disappearing from the sight of anyone who might have been watching from the parking area behind me. The walk through the stadium neighborhood had been everything I hoped for. Quiet streets lined with brownstones, the distant sound of celebrating fans gradually fading behind me. Autumn leaves whispering under streetlights that cast everything in warm, golden pools. I reached the intersection of Grand Concourse and St. Anne's Avenue, feeling completely at peace with the world. The traffic light glowed red in the crisp October air, and I stopped at the crosswalk like any responsible pedestrian, my mind still replaying moments from tonight's magical reconciliation with Robert. The signal changed to green. The walking symbol lit up. I stepped forward into the crosswalk, my old Yankees jersey visible under the streetlight, completely unaware that death was hurtling toward that exact spot at 80 miles per hour. A hand gripped my arm with shocking force, yanking me backward just as I had taken my first step into the intersection. Stop! It's a trap! The huge truck roared past exactly where I would have been standing, the noise of its engine deafening, the headlights blinding, the air displacement of its passage strong enough to tug at my jacket like invisible hands. The ground vibrated beneath my feet from the vehicle's weight and speed. I stumbled backward against the stranger who had grabbed me, both of us nearly falling from the force of my sudden retreat. The truck disappeared around the corner with shrieking tires, leaving behind the sour smell of burnt rubber and diesel exhaust. "What the hell?" I gasped, my heart hammering against my ribs, as the reality of what had just happened crashed over me like ice water. The man who had saved my life steadied me with both hands. His grip was firm and reassuring. He wore glasses and a dark overcoat, medium height, probably Robert's age, with an expression of urgent determination mixed with guilt. "Are you hurt?" he asked, studying my face under the streetlight's glare. I'm alive." My voice came out barely as a whisper. "That truck would have killed me if you hadn't grabbed my arm." The intersection fell into an eerie silence after the vehicle's thunderous passage. No other cars approached from any direction, as if the universe had engineered this near-death moment with theatrical precision. "You need to sit down," the stranger said, guiding me toward a bench near the bus stop. "You're in shock." My legs felt unsteady as we walked the few steps to the bench. The familiar weight of my Yankees cap, the jersey Helen had loved, the comfortable shoes I had chosen for tonight's walk. It all felt surreal now, props in a play where someone had just tried to murder me. "How did you know?" I managed to ask as I sat down heavily on the cold metal bench. "How did you know to be here to grab me at the exact moment?" The stranger sat down beside me, removing his glasses to wipe them with trembling fingers. When he looked at me again, I saw something in his expression that chilled my blood even more than the October night air. "Mr. Morales," he said quietly. We need to talk. I stared at the man who had just saved my life, my mind working through the shock and confusion to place his familiar face. The streetlight cast harsh shadows across his features, but something in his eyes, the set of his jaw, tugged at my memory. "Don't I recognize you from somewhere?" I asked, my voice still shaky from the near-death experience. "I'm David Jones," he said quietly, replacing his glasses with deliberate precision. "Robert's friend from law school. We've met a couple of times at company parties." The name clicked immediately. "David? Yes, of course. The lawyer. You came to our 4th of July barbecue 3 years ago." My confusion deepened. "But how? Why were you here at this precise moment?" He looked down at his hands, guilt written across his features like a confession. "Robert told me about his plan. He hired someone to hit you with that truck." The words struck me harder than the vehicle. "That's impossible," I whispered, my voice breaking. "We just made up tonight. We went to the game together. We laughed." "That was part of the plan, Mr. Morales." David's voice held the weight of terrible knowledge. "He wanted you relaxed and trusting. The baseball game, the reconciliation. It was all calculated to make you an easier target." I felt the world tilt. Reality reconfiguring itself into something unrecognizable. The baseball game, the expensive seats, his apology. All fake? "I'm afraid so. He owes $50,000 to very dangerous people. The only way he could pay them was—" David's voice trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. "Inheriting my company after my death." The stark statement hung in the night air, like a death sentence pronounced in reverse. My son, the boy I had taught to throw a baseball, whose scraped knees I had bandaged, whose college graduation had filled me with such pride, had spent this evening plotting my murder while pretending to love me. "He hired a professional driver," David continued, each word cutting deeper. $50,000 for what would look like a tragic accident. A businessman hit while walking home after a wonderful evening with his son. My hands began to tremble uncontrollably. The Yankees jersey that had felt so meaningful an hour ago. Now it seemed like a costume in some grotesque performance. Every smile Robert had shown me tonight, every laugh we had shared, every moment I had treasured as evidence of our healing relationship. All lies. "Why didn't you warn me sooner?" I asked. My voice came out flat, emotionally spent. "I should have. I wrestled with it all day, torn between loyalty to an old friend and—" He gestured helplessly. "I couldn't let you die for his debts. I couldn't live with that on my conscience." The bench felt cold beneath me. The autumn air cut through my jacket as if my body had forgotten how to generate warmth. Somewhere in the distance, the city's normal nightlife continued. Late diners, couples walking home, the ordinary rhythm of a city that didn't know a father had just discovered his son's ultimate betrayal. $50,000? I repeated in a numb voice. That's what my life was worth to him. David shifted uncomfortably beside me. "Mr. Morales, I know this is devastating, but you need to decide what you're going to do now. Robert doesn't know I intervened. For all he knows, his plan failed because of some timing fluke." I sat in silence, processing the complete destruction of everything I had believed about my relationship with my son, the company I had built, the legacy I had planned to leave him, the love I had never questioned despite our recent conflicts, all reduced to a financial transaction in Robert's mind. Something cold and hard began to form in my chest, replacing the shock and the grief. My son had tried to have me killed for money. Now I needed to decide what a father does with that knowledge. I accepted the cigarette David offered with trembling fingers, even though I hadn't smoked in 20 years. The flame from his lighter illuminated our faces in the darkness, creating a small circle of conspiracy beneath the streetlight. "Tell me everything," I said, my voice steadier now that the initial shock had passed. "I need to understand exactly what my son planned." David exhaled smoke into the October air, organizing his thoughts. "He approached me last Tuesday, said he had a business opportunity that required discretion." "A business opportunity?" A bitter laugh escaped me before I could stop it. My murder was a business opportunity. The debt collectors were pressing him. Brenda had been pushing him about the mortgage, the kids' private school tuition. Everything was spiraling out of control financially. David's voice had the weight of confession. "I thought I'd help him financially, maybe co-sign a loan. Instead, he asked you to help him commit murder." "Not directly at first. He talked about accidents, how convenient it would be if certain problems just disappeared." David dropped his cigarette, grinding it out under his heel. When he finally said it clearly, I was horrified. Police sirens wailed in the distance, multiple vehicles responding to some emergency on the other side of the city. The sound put us both on edge, even though we had technically done nothing wrong. "The driver he hired," I said, forcing myself to focus on the details instead of the emotion. "Who is he?" "A professional. Fakes accidents for insurance fraud, usually. Robert found him through some shady gambling connections." David's glasses reflected the streetlight as he turned back to me. $50,000 for a clean hit and run. No witnesses, no evidence, just a tragic accident. Every detail felt like another nail in the coffin of my relationship with my son. How long had he been planning this? 2 weeks, maybe 3? The baseball game was his stroke of genius, make you emotional and nostalgic, make you want to walk home alone, and then coordinate the timing perfectly. I thought back to Robert's performance tonight. Every calculated smile, every manufactured moment of bonding, every manipulation of my fatherly love. The expensive seats hadn't been generosity. They had been an investment to make me a better target. "Does Brenda know about the debt?" "Yes. About the murder plan. I don't think so. She's been pressing him to get money somehow, but I think she thought he'd get a legitimate loan or business deal." The absurdity suddenly hit me. My daughter-in-law, unknowingly pressuring her husband to commit patricide for private school tuition and mortgage payments. The dream of a comfortable life twisted into something monstrous. "What made you decide to intervene tonight?" I asked. David removed his glasses, wiping them with trembling hands. "This afternoon I realized I couldn't live with myself if I let it happen. Any loyalty I felt for Robert didn't extend to watching an innocent man die. Even knowing you'd be destroying your friendship with him? A friendship with someone who would murder his own father isn't worth keeping." We sat in silence, processing the magnitude of Robert's betrayal. Around us, the city's nighttime sounds continued. Distant traffic, late-night conversations of passing pedestrians, the hum of a city unaware that a son had tried to murder his father for inheritance money. "He'll be waiting for news," I said finally. "Probably checking obituaries, news reports, waiting for confirmation that I'm dead." "What are you going to do?" I stood up from the bench, feeling something change inside me, not just emotionally, but almost physically. The Arthur Morales, who had been a loving, trusting father, was gone forever. In his place was someone harder, colder, more calculating. "I'm going to make sure he gets exactly what he deserves," I said. Nothing. I arrived at David's office dressed in my best business suit, carrying a leather briefcase that contained documents I had spent the sleepless night organizing. The location in the university area felt appropriate, near the school where Robert and David had met, where my son had learned the arrogance that ultimately led him to plot my murder. "Arthur, come in," David closed his office door behind me, gesturing to the chairs arranged around his desk. Coffee? Black. Thank you. I set my briefcase on the polished wood surface, noting how David's diplomas and ethical guidelines were prominently displayed on the walls. I've had time to think about what I want to do. The office smelled of leather-bound law books and fresh coffee. A professional sanctuary where we could carry out the legal destruction of my son's future, without emotion or sentimentality clouding our judgment. I want to disinherit him completely from everything, I said, snapping open my briefcase to reveal the current will documents, the company and corporate papers, and the financial statements. The company, the house, the investments. He gets nothing. David nodded, already prepared. I have the necessary forms ready. What would you like to do with the assets instead? A charitable foundation, the Morales Community Housing Foundation. The idea had crystallized during my sleepless night, Helen's voice seeming to guide my thoughts. The company will continue to operate, but all profits will fund affordable housing for working families. That's truly brilliant, David said, reviewing the documents I had brought. It serves the community while ensuring Robert receives exactly what he has earned. Nothing. We spent the next hour methodically dismantling Robert's inheritance expectations. Every asset he had assumed would be his. Every dollar he had counted on inheriting. Redirected to help families who actually contributed to society instead of plotting murder for financial gain. The foundation structure prevents him from contesting the will, David explained, as we reviewed the legal language. Charitable bequests are heavily protected by state law. Good. I want this to be bulletproof. I signed each document with the same precision I had used for 42 years of business contracts. How quickly can we make this legally binding? With notarization immediately. I'll arrange for witnesses for Friday afternoon. David sealed various copies with his official stamp. The bank will hold the original. You'll keep copies, and I'll maintain another set in my files. Looking out his office window toward the University Plaza, I felt a strange sense of culmination. The very institution where Robert had learned to feel entitled to things he hadn't earned would now be within walking distance of the legal documents, stripping him of every last cent of that entitlement. About our conversation the other night, I said, as we prepared the final copies. Client-attorney confidentiality covers everything. Absolutely. What Robert told me, what happened on the street, your decision today, it's all protected. David's expression was serious but relieved. You're choosing justice over vengeance. Arthur, Helen would be proud. The mention of my wife's name struck exactly the right note. She would indeed approve of using the company to help families, instead of rewarding the son who tried to murder me for money. Let him wait for the inheritance that will never come, I said, placing the signed documents into my briefcase. While he expects riches, the foundation will be building homes for people who actually deserve them. We shook hands across his desk, not just as lawyer and client, but as two men who had chosen to do the right thing despite the personal cost. David was losing a lifelong friend. I was losing a son. But sometimes, justice requires sacrifices from the innocent as well as punishment for the guilty. The notary's office occupied a corner building in the city's historic Lower Manhattan neighborhood, surrounded by the kind of authentic immigrant community that had built this city through honest work rather than inherited wealth. I walked through the door carrying the finalized foundation documents, feeling the weight of justice in my leather briefcase. Mr. Morales, right on time, the notary, a third-generation professional whose family had witnessed important documents in this neighborhood for 60 years, motioned me toward his desk. I understand we have quite a few papers to make official today. I organized the documents methodically. The new will completely disinheriting Robert, the charitable foundation incorporation papers, the company asset transfer documents, the personal property bequests to educational charities. Each paper represented another nail in the coffin of my son's inheritance expectations. Identity verification first, the notary said, examining my driver's license and social security card with professional thoroughness. Then we'll need 2 independent witnesses for the will changes. The witnesses arrived precisely at 3:15 o'clock, a retired schoolteacher and a small business owner, both chosen by David for their unimpeachable reputations and complete lack of connection to my family. They studied the documents carefully before adding their signatures to each page. The Morales Community Housing Foundation, the retired teacher read aloud. What a wonderful legacy, Mr. Morales. The company will serve its true purpose, I replied, signing with the same steady hand that had built Morales Construction from nothing. Building homes instead of destroying families. The notary applied his official seal to each document with ceremonial precision, the metallic stamp making permanent what my son's decision had made inevitable. Each impression created a legal reality out of my overnight planning. Your son is not mentioned anywhere in the new will, the notary observed professionally. That's unusual in family businesses. He made his choices. This reflects the consequences of those choices, standing in that small office, surrounded by the tools of legitimate legal process. I felt something I hadn't experienced since Helen's death. A complete peace with my decisions. Robert had wanted my death to make himself rich. Instead, my continued life would make deserving families rich. The company he had tried to inherit through patricide would now fund affordable housing for working families. The personal assets he counted on would support the education of young people who understood that success required effort, not murder. All documents are properly executed and legally binding, the notary announced, handing me official copies. The foundation will receive everything according to your specifications. I placed the papers in my briefcase, with the satisfaction of a man who had outmaneuvered an enemy without compromising his principles. Helen's voice seemed to whisper her approval. She had always believed in helping others, rather than enabling family dysfunction. Outside the notary's office, I paused to light a cigar in the afternoon sun. The harbour air carried the scent of salt from the Atlantic coast, mixing with the Cuban tobacco smoke Helen had occasionally allowed me to enjoy. Walking toward the waterfront, I reflected on the elegant totality of the justice I had arranged. Robert's motive for murder had been retroactively removed. The inheritance that drove him to hire an assassin no longer existed. The money he wanted would instead help families who truly needed a home. At the harbour railing, I looked out over the horizon where Helen and I had planned to sail together. The foundation would be her monument as much as mine, transforming what could have been a story of family destruction into a legacy of community building. Behind me, traffic moved through the narrow streets of the old neighbourhood, ordinary people busy with their honest affairs. None of them knew that justice had just been quietly served in a small notary office, or that a son's attempted patricide had been transformed into a father's gift to the community. The briefcase in my hand held more than legal documents. It held the proof that, sometimes, the best revenge is ensuring that goodness triumphs over evil through entirely legitimate means. I finished my cigar and walked home, completely satisfied with the way the moral math had balanced the equation of my son's betrayal. Thank you for watching us.